The new bunny boot got a redesign this year with the Alaska Gear Company. This right here is the old bunny boot, and this right here is the new bunny boot. When I was a kid growing up in Alaska, everybody had a pair of these boots. These boots have done the Iditarod Trail. They've worked up in the North Slope oil fields. They're everywhere because they do so well in the extreme cold weather. These boots were originally designed by the military because of a battle in 1950 in the Korean War. I got a pair of the new bunny boots at the beginning of the winter, and I've wore them for just about every single day in the last 6 months. I'll tell you how the new bunny boots stack up to the old ones, but first, let's talk about the history, because the history of the bunny boots is fascinating.
The Korean War started in the summer of 1950 after the North Korean communists invaded South Korea and crossed the 38th parallel, which had been designated as a line separating the Russian and Chinese-backed communist government in the north and the US UN-backed government in the south. Initially, the North Koreans overwhelmed the south and nearly took control of the entire Korean peninsula. But they were pushed back when the US and UN forces joined the war. The US pushed the North Koreans nearly to the Yalu River, which creates the Chinese border with North Korea. It was thought that the US military would push the communists out of the entire Korean peninsula, and General Douglas MacArthur even announced that the troops would be home for Christmas in 1950. But in late November 1950, something drastic happened that changed the momentum of the entire Korean War. The communists rapidly drove the US and UN forces south in a major withdrawal and reversal of events. So rewind this a little bit. One of the most significant battles in American history happened here, and very few people know about it. What happened here is called the Battle of Chosin Reservoir. On the Chinese side, it's called the Battle of Lake Changjin. You see, the US military, mostly made up of the Marine 1st Division and the 9th Army Group, advanced north to the Chosin Reservoir. The temperatures plummeted to negative 35 degrees. There were reports that the Chinese were going to join the war, but these rumors were largely dismissed by the US High Command. The US forces were spread out along strategic roads around the reservoir when they were completely surrounded and attacked by the PVA, the People's Volunteer Army of China. The Chinese concealed an army of 120,000 soldiers and marched over the mountains in the freezing temperatures to confront and literally encircle the US forces there. The Chinese were able to hide their entire army advance because they traveled on foot, took no heavy machinery or artillery, they traveled only by night, and they stayed perfectly still, camouflaging on the ground if any US reconnaissance planes were spotted. The fighting was intense and made worse by the extreme cold. American troops talked about equipment failing because of the cold, their skin freezing to the metal, and there came a point when the only guns that would work were the bolt-action rifles. This engagement was highlighted by how out of touch the top command, who were stationed in Tokyo, Japan, were with the severe and extreme conditions on the ground. The US forces, mostly Marines, would have been completely overrun except they performed a fighting withdrawal. The 1st Marine Division, commanded by General Oliver Smith, famously said about the withdrawal, "Retreat, hell. We're not retreating, we're just advancing in a different direction." He said this because they found themselves surrounded by the Chinese and needed to fight through roadblocks to get south to the port city of Hangnam. The fighting was intense and left 2,500 US troops killed. This was called a fighting withdrawal because of the intense action and coordination that took place to get the military out of the battle. They inflicted severe casualties on the Chinese, with some sources stating 30,000 Chinese died during the battle. The Chinese had numerical superiority and outnumbered the US 4-1, but the battle was defined by the extreme cold weather, and both sides suffered greatly because of the extreme cold. Over 8,000 US troops were injured by extreme cold weather with frostbite. If you look at the cold weather gear that the US forces used, it was clearly inadequate for negative 35 degrees. However, the Chinese side was even worse. The Chinese had almost no cold weather gear and suffered 60,000 casualties during the battle. There were reports that entire Chinese divisions were frozen dead where they stood, holding their positions. The Chinese view this battle as a major national achievement, and in 2021 they made a major motion picture of this battle, and it became the highest grossing film ever in China. The US Marine Corps regard the Battle of Chosin Reservoir as one of the most legendary and defining moments, a symbol of resilience, heroism, and triumph against overwhelming odds. The Marines do not see this as a defeat, but as an epic fighting withdrawal that preserved the 1st Marine Division while inflicting devastating losses on the Chinese People's Volunteer Army. It is often called the Corps' finest hour and ranks alongside Iwo Jima in Marine lore. Because of this battle, the Marines are called the Chosen Few.
Most people watching this won't understand how severe negative 35 degrees is and how quickly that can cause damage to your skin and cause irreversible frostbite. I'm an orthopedic surgeon in Alaska and I take care of a lot of frostbite injuries. During the winter, I take care of about 2 to 3 frostbite patients a month. And that's kind of a lot, but after the Battle of Chosin Reservoir, there would have been around 8,000 patients with severe frostbite injuries. All of these patients would have need care at the exact same time. Imagine taking care of 8,000 patients all at the same time. That would have been horrendous. The amount of necrotic tissue and fingers and toes that would have needed surgical amputation would have been devastating and would have been really difficult for the healthcare providers. As a direct result of this battle, the military decided that they needed to develop cold weather gear to support the troops in severe cold weather conditions like the Battle of Chosin Reservoir. In 1951, they developed the extreme cold vapor barrier boots. These boots and other cold weather gear like it were tested in Fort Greely, Alaska. Fort Greely supported cold weather equipment testing and training and was called the Arctic Indoctrination School. In 1957, that organization was renamed the U.S. Army Arctic Test Board, with the explicit mission of conducting Arctic service tests for all field equipment. While performing tests around Fort Greely of the extreme cold vapor barrier boots, the military personnel nicknamed them the bunny boots. And the bunny boots stuck. They're named after the snowshoe hare in Alaska that turn white during the wintertime. They also have big oversized feet to help them walk on top of the snow. My father was born near Big Delta, Alaska, which is near Fort Greely. When he was a kid in the 1950s, he said that the best day of his life was when he got his first pair of bunny boots. Over time, the bunny boots started to make their way into the civilian population. And when my dad got his first pair of bunny boots when he was a kid, he said it was the best day of his life because he said that was the first day that his feet were ever warm in his life. My dad is now 80 years old, and when he's telling me this story, he had this big smile on his face. You can almost see his memories of these boots when he was talking about it. Over time, the bunny boot became ubiquitous in Alaska. My dad and everybody else's dads had a bunny boot in Alaska. They are the boot of choice in the North Slope oil fields. So after 75 years, the Alaska Gear Company did a redesign of the bunny boots, the old legend bunny boots, and came up with a new design. They actually came up with 3 different designs. They came up with the light, the max, and the composite. I have a pair of the light bunny boots. The old bunny boots are pretty cool. They're oversized. They're supposed to keep you warm down to negative 60 degrees. They even have a little pressure release valve. So when you go up into airplanes that are not pressurized, you can open this valve, lets air in and out, but all the other times that you use the boots, the valve's supposed to be closed. New bunny boots, they don't have those valves. Like I said, there's 3 different levels of the bunny boots. I got the light pair. I love these boots for their specific use case scenario. And my use case scenario for these boots was pretty basic. It's walking around Anchorage and doing things in the middle of the winter time and keeping my feet warm. I'm not trying to do things like mountaineering in these boots. If you want a very specific use case for your boots like mountaineering, then you need to buy a boot just for that use case scenario. But the bunny boots do a really good job of keeping your feet warm. A couple things I really like about the new bunny boots, they're super easy to get on and off. They got a little handle back here, which I never use because they're so easy to get on and off. You literally just slip them on, slip them off. You can literally just pull them off and pull them on again. And that's so important because anytime you go indoors and back outdoors, you gotta take your boots off and then back on again. And I hate having to get down and untie and tie my boots. So these boots, being able to just slip them off, slip them on again, perfect. The traction on the bottom of the boots is okay, it's reasonable. As far as the durability on them, I've literally used them every day for the last 6 months and they've been great. I have put them to the test. I've taken them out deer hunting in Prince William Sound. I've taken them out snow machining, snowmobiling quite a few times and they held up pretty good. But some of the negatives of the new bunny boot is, one is it's open at the top, which is good for getting the boot on and off, but it's a funnel for snow. So if you're walking out, it goes up past the boot, it's gonna fall right into the boot, which is kind of a bummer. Even if your pants legs are over or you have snow pants over the boot, sometimes it just gets up under the pants and then it's just a funnel into the pants. So if you're doing things in deep snow with these boots, then you want gaiters or somehow to seal them. The cost of the bunny boot's a little bit high, but they are definitely nice and waterproof. They're waterproof all the way to the top of the boots. These are the Bunny Boot VBX Lights. Again, there's a max version, which is rated to even lower temperatures, I believe negative 40 or maybe negative 50 degrees. And then there's the Bunny Boot VBX Max, which is kind of the workhorse of the Bunny boots. Those are the boots made for the North Slope. They're puncture resistant, oil chemical resistant, electric shock resistant, and slip resistant. So if you need to do some industrial work in the extreme cold weather, then the VBX Max is probably your boots. But for hanging out in Alaska, walking around town, and doing some basic stuff in the outdoors, the basic pair of Bunny boots do a fantastic job, and they look pretty cool. So I've definitely been happy with these boots. Alaska Gear Company, they definitely did not pay me to do this. There's no way somebody could pay me enough to review their product, but I'm happy to do this. But mainly I'm doing this because I was fascinated by the history of the old Bunny boots. The old Bunny boots with their history of the Korean War and the Battle of Chosin Reservoir, and how the old Bunny boots were developed, and their historic connection with Alaska, I just think is pretty cool. So if you need a good bit of winter boot, guess consider the Bunny boot. It's pretty cool. The old ones or the new ones, they both work great.